basically, once you install salt, okay, so the default installation location will be /etc salt. So go to this directory. So this is where all your configurations are going to be available. Okay, so it's always a best practice whenever you want to modify any configuration, write them inside the minion.d. Talking about the folder structure, okay, refer. So when you install salt, all the components are getting installed in the all the component configurations are available in the etc salt directory. Okay, inside that, if you see, there will be is there. Okay, so let me just start with these files, master, minion, and minion ID. Okay, so all the others I will just walk it through later. So first thing is as this being a master, okay, I am going to concentrate on the master configuration file. Okay, so when you install, the default configuration comes from the master file. Okay, and you would be able to see a directory called master.d. And inside that, nothing will be there. And it's a best practice whenever you modify any configuration. Okay, you can write it inside the master.d. So that will be overwritten on that, because when you refer the master configuration file, everything will be in the commented state and it will be having the default values. Okay, so let me use the more command, more. So this is the configuration, primary configuration setting for your master. Okay, and by default, it includes all the files inside the master.d with the .conf location. Okay, whenever you want to write any individual top file, all those things you will be writing it inside the master.conf directory. Okay, so when you run a salt command, it will come and verify the configuration file in the location, and based on that, it is going to configure that respectively. Okay, so the first command I want to show here is called as the interface. On what interface my master need to be listening. Okay, 0.0.0.0 represents any IP. If you call this mission, it will be responding. Or if you say that I want the master to be responding to only one particular interface, then you can use it. So I'm not going to make any changes here. So let it listen on all the network interfaces which are attached to this mission. Okay, so if you want your master to be listening on a particular IP address, or that is the interface, then you can specify that interface here. You need to uncomment that and you need to put the IP address of it. Okay, and by default, IPv6 will not be enabled. If you want IPv6, enable them separately. Okay, and if you see the file, you will have a proper documentation for it in the comments. Okay, whenever you want to do that, you can just refer this. Okay, and next is the publisher port and then the returner port. Okay, so there was a question asked, okay, on what port this communication happens. Let me take a quick diagram of it. Just a moment. So this is a simple diagram how the master and minion are going to communicate. So basically, when you install the salt master, you need to have two ports opened on the master. Okay, there is no any specific firewall requirement for the minion. Okay, so on the port number 4505, all the commands will be given to this is called as a publisher port. Okay, and basically the salt minion will have a asynchronous connection established between the publisher port, and whenever there is a request, or like if I want to get the pillar data, or if I want to send the response back, so it will be done on the 4506. Okay, so this will be a it is a synchronous call between the request server. So on the master, you will have two ports to be open. One is 4505 and then 4506. And if you want to change it, you can change it in the configuration file. And in the server, these ports should be allowed in the firewall. If you have a firewall enabled on the server, these things should be opened on the firewall, and through this port only the communication between the master and the minion will happen. Okay, so that is what you are seeing the information here. What is the publish port? Okay, and next is the user. Under which user I want the salt daemon to be running. If you want it to be running on a different user, you can configure it. Default will be the salt daemon will be running as a root user. Okay, and next is here SSH minions. So normally I told you when master wants to communicate to minion, it uses the 0MQ. Instead of that, if you want it to use the salt SSH also, you can enable it. By default, it is disabled. Okay, if you want that to be enabled, you can specify this as true. And this is the request server port number. That is a return port 4506. Okay, and next is the what is the process ID for the salt daemon. So this is the process ID, PID file. Okay, and then what should be the directory pretended to this option, like PK directory, cache directory, all those things where I am going to see it. Slash is the directory. And next is the conf directory. If you have a custom configuration file in a different location, you can just specify it here. Okay, and next is the PKA directory, where is the certificate informations are stored. You can see it here. And then where exactly the cache are stored. I told about the job cache and all these things are stored here. Okay, so here you can see for every minion you will see a directory here, but this is for the master. Okay, and then if you have any custom modules, so you can have it here, the custom directory. And then if you have module directory, you can just specify it here. And then how long I can keep the old job information in cache. Okay, so it will be 24 hours. So whenever I run do any salt execution, by default 24 hours the job history will be maintained. Anything older than 24 hours it will be discarded. So if you want to modify that, you can do that. And next is the gather timeout. Okay, so if this is the timeout specified to wait when the client is requesting information about a running job. Okay, and next is the API timeout. When I call the API, what should be the timeout? And this is the loop interval. If I want to retry something, what should be the loop interval? Okay, so this is the salt outputters. If you want to have any specific directory, you can just specify that. And then if you want to write it to a specific file, you can just do it. Okay, if I want to specify the timeout, what is the time happened for executing a command, you can just put it. Okay, so these are other color options. Major area I want to show is the top directory, because this is a very huge file. Okay, and this is for the GPU level information. If the grains in the minion GPU related data, if you want to gather, by default it is disabled. If you can enable it, but it is going to be a resource consuming process. Based on your need, you can do it, like whether GPU associated with the minion, I want to gather information about it, you can just do that, but this is resource consuming. Okay, then these are all the data caching for the minion. Okay, so what is the expiry, memcache, all those things you can see it here. It's a huge file. My intention will be on the top directory. I'll just go there. These are all the key retention policy. If you want to rotate it, all those things you can see here. These are all the large scale tuning. If you want to tune that, what will be the maximum open files? What is the maximum worker threads? Okay, so this is the maximum worker threads is 5. Okay, and if you want to increase the thread, you can increase it. Default is 5. Okay, if you want to increase this, you can just do it. And this is the 0MQ queue size. Okay, are any failures, and if you want to increase the queue size of 0MQ, you can come and do it here. These are all the security settings. Okay. So I talked about the auto accepting the key, right? So whenever you want to enable auto accepting of the minions, you can mention it as true. By default, it is false. Okay. As a best practice, I would suggest keep it false. And whenever you are adding a minion to the master, come and manually accept that. That will be a best practice, so that any rogue system which are connected to that, I don't want that to be automatically added to my Salt infrastructure. And you can specify the key size. These are all the other configuration, auto sign, auto reject configuration. You can just see it here. You can put a pattern. Okay. And next, the ACL. Okay. We'll see an example later. So basically ACL is nothing but who can issue what kind of Salt modules. Like for example, on the Salt master, I have multiple users who will be accessing it, and I want to control which user can access which kind of module. I can specify that in the ACL. So this is an example. There is a user called Larry. Okay, I want that. By default, it is disabled. If you enable it, you can just say that he can run only test ping and network related commands. ACL is disabled. This is for the PAM authentication. These are all the C key files location. This is the Salt SSH configuration. When Salt wants to communicate to the agent via Salt SSH, these are all the configurations are being used. Okay, what is the default port number I should use for SSH? Whether I should use a sudo on the method. Okay, so by default it is false. All those things you can just see. What is the default user I should be using it for Salt SSH? All those things you can just see this. Yeah. Okay, this is for Salt SSH, and these are all the master module. This is the state. So what are all the Jinja templates? I can use it. It supports both Jinja and YAML format. You can just go through them one by one, okay? Because this is a very huge file. So this is the file server settings. So this is what the top I'm going to talk about. Okay. By default, Salt will be looking for the states in this directory /srv/salt. Okay. And this is where I can define environment specific state files. Like for example, for dev, I want a different state. So I'll be defining like this. So this I will be able to do a gitfs mounting also. Okay, we'll see an example of gitfs detail. So as of now, this will be your sample top file. Okay, so you can also write your own top file where you can say state files will be available on this directory. Okay, /srv salt. And if you want it to be available in a different directory, you can modify that. And this is an example for dev. Get the state file from this. Okay, while executing the Salt state, you can specify the environment and the respective state files will be utilized while you are executing this. So this is the file server system. Okay, so this is a sample top file. You can also write your same individual top file also. Okay, so this is the environment order. So the default it will be base, and after that dev and prod will be done. Okay, so we'll see that while executing the state file. And these are all the options for the states, regular expression. If I want to ignore any of the files, okay, all those things you can just do it. So by default, it will be the root file system. Okay, we are going to see a lab on the Git file system, gitfs, and we can use that. So all this configuration, you can see it here. This is what one of the main thing I want to show. Gitfs will do that. And this is the pillar, where exactly the pillar will be there. Okay. Instead of pillar, if you want to write a Hira is a Puppet configuration management. Like you can just specify use that also. Okay, but by default it uses the pillar. So in the pillar, this is what you can save the information. This is the location. It will be looking for the pillar. While doing the pillar configuration, we'll come back and see this. So these are all the pillar configurations. the reactor configuration. What is the reactor? And this is the syndic configuration and the multi-master thing. Okay. So this is the peer publish settings. I told you Salt can also work in multiple topologies, right? One Salt minion also can execute commands on another Salt minion. So those configurations, you can see it here in the peer configuration. Mine, I told you, like this is the area where you are going to see the all the execution level information. You can find it in the mine. And what is the location? You can get it. This is the mine. And next is the log files, where exactly the logs are stored. Normally it will be stored in the var log salt, and then you can just see that. And what is the default log level? Okay, default log level is warning. So if you want to increase the default log level of it, you can do it. Or while executing a particular command, if you want to increase the log level, that is also possible. So this is the default settings. If you want to override in the command line, you can just do that also. So you can just specify how you want the log file format to be done. All those things you can do this. And this is called as the node grouping. So minion, you can group them. Okay, you can put a while character, and then you can put a group multiple minions into a single group, and that can be do it. And this is the Windows software repo. Like for example, if you want install packages on Windows, we need to provide the package server. So this is the default Windows repository. Okay, for that this is on the Windows. And in our lab, we are going to talk about Chocolately. We will just do that. Okay. And in the returner, if you want to specify the logs to be writing onto a specific thing, you can just do it. So this is one example of the MySQL. You can write it to a MySQL. Okay. These are all the other settings, miscellaneous, and then keep alive settings. Okay. So these are all the default configuration you can find it. And as a best practice, I would say if you are modifying any configuration, master.d, don't touch it in the master, so that it will be easy for you to manage. So what are all your custom configurations are done. So this is on the master configuration file. And another file I want to show about is called as the minion ID cat minion underscore ID. So this is a minion configuration because in this server we have installed minion also. So when the minion is trying to connect to the master, what should be the name it should be displaying to the master, that you can find it under the minion.d. Normally it will take the host name of the mission, and that will be used as the minion ID. If you want to modify that, you can modify that also. Okay, that is the minion.id, minion underscore ID. And as we have minion installed here, you can also see a minion configuration file also here. So normally this will be having the information about the what should be the master. If I need to use any proxy settings to connect to the master, I can use that. All those things informations will be used here. Okay, so let me talk about minion. Also has a minion.d directory. Inside that you can write the configuration. Okay, and the default master name will be salt. Okay, so you can either name it like all the minions will be connected to the, let's say, salt. You can just name like put a host name like salt, or otherwise if you have a custom the salt master running on your custom domain, let's say something like master training your domain.com, then you can come and write this minion configuration there. So that will be doing that for you, help it for you. And then this is what I talked about, the proxy, if a non-proxy host, and then random master, like if I wanted to connect to a different masters when needed. So this will come into the multi-master scenario. There you can just say whether I can connect to the random master or anything. All those things you can just see it here. Which configuration? Okay. So frequently, like the retry DNS. What is the master port it will be listening? So on under which user I need to run the salt minion daemon. What is the minion process ID? So you can see a detailed information about this. Random master is something like, imagine like you have 3 masters which are in an active scenario, and you want it to be randomly access the master. or you want to sequentially access the matter, that's what you are showing it in the random here. So also have information about your grains, what should be the configuration file for the SSH, all those information, you can just see it here. These are all the two major important configuration files, and if you want to do it, you can just put it in here. Okay, and other than that, you will be able to see the PK directory, all the client certificate and all those things. You can just see it here, and you will have the proxy settings. Okay, and then the cloud configurations, you can find it here. You can define the parameters. So we'll see that in detail when we go into that respective labs of it. Okay, who is the cloud provider? Like if I want the GCP to be as a cloud provider, how do you specify that? All those things you can just see it here. Okay, and this is the configuration directory. And at the same time, if you go to the var log, you will see all directory. Inside that you can see all the salt related log files, because this is the default configuration. We have seen it in the master. So you can see the master logs, minion logs, syndic logs, all those things you can just see it here. Okay. This is the default log location of the salt.